Okay, great. Let's see if we can get some more people from lunch out here. It's good to see the people that's already here. I believe this is a really interesting panel, so I think people would want to hear it as well. But I'll slowly start, make a slow introduction, give people the opportunity to come in. But this is a panel called Sound Investment. We're going to talk about what makes up a sound investment in the music tech space, especially with the perspective of AI. So I'm just going to drag this out like 30 seconds more, give people an opportunity before I make introductions. But we have some great guests on board. I'm looking forward to the next 45 minutes with you guys. Just to give a small brief introduction of who I am. I'm a founder, like many of you guys. I work within the music tech space. I've been lucky to onboard a lot of investors in what I do and have built up an idea of what works. But there's some people here that probably knows a lot more than me how it actually works. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I will introduce some of the guests. We have Xavia Peters from LeanSquare. You're the CEO of LeanSquare, and you have over a decade of experience investing in this space, and you're also the co-founder of California. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We have, I'm going to butcher the name, Thierry Baujard. Yes. You're the founder of the Pan-European Investment Network Media Deals, and you're an expert in financing investment in the creative industries. We have Hazel Savage, who is, VP of Music Intelligence at SoundCloud and also co-founder of Museo that got acquired by SoundCloud. And now you are also an angel investor in different music tech companies. So thank you for doing that. And then we have Florian Stegeh, Managing Director of Deutsche Telekom Fund, and you lead strategic early stage venture investments. So guys, we're going to talk about something interesting today. There's a lot of hype in the industry, in all industries, and especially with AI. There's a lot of trends that comes and goes, and you guys need to sort of navigate that space as investors. So I'm curious to know, what do you look for in a founder and in a company, especially from the perspective of AI trends? Sarah, maybe we start with you. What do you look for in a founder or in a startup?
So whatever the kind of startup, because I know that we have to talk about the AI, but the first things that we looking for when we analyze a company, if we want to invest in or not, is the team. That's the first criteria that we are looking for, the team, in terms of experience, but also in terms of the capacity to prove us that they can achieve the goal, that they can execute the plan that they present to us. So the team is the most important things that we are looking for. We prefer to invest in a good team, but maybe with a project, on a basic project, than on a huge project with a bad team. After it's all the criteria are always the same in terms of project, in terms of market, in terms of answer to the people on the market. In terms of revenues, because we are in LeanSquare, we are a late seed fund, so we are looking for startup with product, with commercial traction, with a milestone achieved on the market, and for sure we are a tech investor, so we are looking for the tech and what kind of tech they propose to us.
Thierry, do you have any other metrics besides that?
Well, of course, the founders the team is very, very important. It's clear. I think the one part is really about the execution. I think Xavier mentioned it. I think it's a very important part because obviously you can have a great idea, but at the end, if it's not really well executed or executed on time, etc., I think it's a real question. I think the timing. I mean, of course, it depends, but I think the timing is always very important. And talking about AI, I think it's a question. Too early is definitely maybe too early, but too late is also not very good. So looking at the timing in the market, I think is quite an important thing. After, in terms of technology, I know that we're going to talk more about it after, but I think today what is important is to have a technology that is well developed, that could be well continued to be developed, because the thing with technology is that it, as you know, it never stops. And I think is one of the points is really to understand if the technology is really right for the time, and that is able to be to develop further for the scalability for later. So I think whatever is the technology, I think it's very important that we can count on it and develop it further, so that we don't have to restart and rechange everything, because that happens quite a lot.
So just to understand that completely, so you say technology needs to have the ability to be developed, built upon, iterate further than product you're building. So there needs to be sort of a extra step possible, at least on a theoretical level? Or like, what do you mean by that?
I think it goes at the same time with the product development. I mean, today, I think the most of the companies we see, I mean, we do things in so audiovisual, music tech, video games as well. So a lot of projects that are between content and technology. So I think different from Xavier, for example, we are looking at, I will not say content, but really also not just the technology. So it's really developing the product and making sure that the product will develop and will grow with the right technology.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to comment on that?
Maybe. So I totally agree with Thierry. I mean, the technology is not the only thing that we are looking for. I mean, the technology has to solve something, and so it's not just a technology that we buy, but it's an answer to the market, and it's an answer to a need in the market that technology can achieve. It's all about that.
That makes sense. About timing, Hazel, because you had an AI company, well, you still have an AI company that you sold, and your timing was good. Could you comment on timing for me with AI and music tech?
Well, you say that, but we were just backstage now, Thierry and I, and we were saying I was probably a little bit too early. Because I was saying when I started building an AI company in 2018, nobody cared. No one was remotely interested. It was really hard to get anyone to pay attention. And in like the last 12 months, I've never had so much interest and activity and requests to talk to me, because AI is the hot new thing. So I feel like potentially, maybe I was a little bit too early, but to build on what the other panelists were saying, when we also raised investment, you know, I'm an incubator company, so we've done Entrepreneur First, which is a UK-based incubator, but we did it in Singapore. And the lead VC, Wavemaker Partners, that were our lead investor, they invested in 5 companies out of our cohort. And of the 5, we were the only pre-revenue at seed. And the reason being, because they loved the team. So I was a sort of a domain expert founder with 10 years music industry experience. My co-founder was our CTO with 10 years experience building AI. We literally had the whole company right there in 2 people. We had sales, marketing, product development, everything. There was no, well, we're going to need to hire a good salesperson, and we're going to need to hire. Like we covered everything. There was no overlap in our talents, and so we were told we got invested on the strength of the team, because we didn't have any revenue yet. So I think I also, I'm not sure I would recommend raising a lot of money pre-revenue. That was not fun, but you know, I think timing is important.
Florian, what's your opinion about what you look in a company you want to invest in, of the qualities that can possess, besides, I'm going to ask you, besides the team, besides the technology and the timing, do you have anything else?
Yeah, what came to my mind is when you talked about timing, right? I mean, you also need to be aware of kind of like the trends and timings in the venture industry. And from the venture side, and I mean, obviously everybody knows that the keyword of AI, like you said, right? If you just put the keyword AI on your pitch deck, everyone is kind of like is getting interested. But I mean, you also need to know that I would say a really high percentage point of the VC industry is not educated enough at the moment around AI. And I mean, that's totally normal, right? And I also have to say it, even like for myself, I totally admit, right? I mean, we are more like a generalist investor. We are looking kind of like for explorative investments for Deutsche Telekom, so topics that we might go into as a corporate in the future, but don't have a business at the moment. And I mean, I studied computer science like 20, 25 years ago, and so far with all the trends, I would have said, hey, at least I have kind of like a good bullshit detector, right? If a technical founder explains me something, I can somehow feel if this is somehow feasible or not. Honestly, in the last 1 or 2 years, if it really comes to foundational AI models or something like this, I'm totally admitting that I'm totally lost, right? And I would say this is true for 95% of all partners at VCs right now. And VCs are always, even by trying to go into the next topic, are always trying to base this on a certain type of pattern recognition, right? That's kind of like the superpower of a VC, that obviously you have seen a lot more than the typical founder. You've seen a lot of pitch decks, lots of companies, lots of successes, lots of failures. So you are somehow trying to look at something new and turn on your pattern recognition machine and say, hey, is this somehow comparable to something I have seen 5 or 10 years ago? And those kind of patterns still need to be figured out kind of like in the AI space. There are a few ones where this works perfectly well. I think that's the reason why you saw also those super big ticket investments into AI companies who were more or less just buying chips at NVIDIA, right? Because that's a model that a lot of VC financed 10, 15 years ago when it came to the next, like an AWS or Azure or Snowflake or all these kind of companies you have seen in the past. But for example, really for companies trying to decide, does it make sense to stay more on, let's say, put a fancy application or user interface on top of an existing AI model, modify that in a certain way, or really go deep in terms of technology, and don't even have the right business model and licensing model behind it, it's super tough for VCs at the moment to make investment decisions.
I'm just going to stray away from the topics we discussed just quickly, and it's not to plug myself. I'm a founder, and I have in the portfolio companies we have 18 investors, angels, family office, and super angels. We don't have any VCs, and I've spent a lot of time educating my investors into the space I operate in. But that obviously is different from bigger investment funds and VCs. So my question is, anyone can grab it. Is it worth the time for founders trying to educate VCs in their space?
It depends, which is a very difficult answer. But I felt like when we were pitching our company, I remember there was a family office that I met with, and it was such a weird meeting. It was in Singapore. It was 2 hours long. There wasn't enough chairs in the room, so I was sat on the floor. That's just a really weird memory that's come back to me. But I had my laptop on the table, but I was on the floor and I was, trying to show this investor. And I was there for about 2 hours. And right near the end of the 2 hours, he still couldn't grasp the difference between a record label and a recording studio. And I was like, this isn't going to work. And that's fine. This guy's never met someone in the music industry before. However, they made their money is not in the music industry. So sometimes it depends. If this guy wants to invest in music, am I going to have to spend a significant portion of my time as a founder on the phone with this guy every day, trying to teach him everything I learned in the last 10 years? Or is he just going to give me the money and let me get on with it? And I feel like it's the same with AI. There are definitely some investors who will learn quickly, who are super savvy. I mean, I loved our lead investor, Wavemaker Partners. They just would grasp onto things so quickly and be able to workshop it with you. And so as I say, I think it depends on the investor.
Interesting. Thierry?
Yes, I mean, definitely it's not easy, but I think it's necessary for the sector to have more investors involved in any case, because in the music tech, or as I say, we're doing more creative industries, definitely we are lacking a certain more investors to be able to talk to more people. And of course, VCs are very different from family office and business angel, because obviously VC, it's not their money, so they have different plan of what they want to invest in. So it's a bit less flexible and come a bit later. So what we do, because we need to have more investors. I mean, I'm running as well a music tech in acceleration program across Europe that is supported by the European Commission. And what we do is we are trying to do investors-only sessions online, that we do at the moment. sometimes with people with experience to discuss a bit the trends and how to work together, etc. But we also do sessions with people who are not into the sector but are curious, intrigued, and of course, I guess they have some kind of, interest in some way, which, for music, it's a lot of personal interest sometimes, because I find out that many people, once you talk to them, say, oh, I love music, etc. So there is something about that. And trying to discuss together with these investors and also bringing maybe one or two with more experience and to try to educate or give them some information about that. And every time we find always, a couple that at the end say, oh yes, it's interesting and I want to know more. And the next step is really to see how to get them on the syndicate to basically jump on a project, maybe with a very small investment. So I don't know, you said you had 18 investors, so that's a nightmare, I would say. But so that means you have a lot of follower investors. And that's a good way to get people to learn and to get to know how to invest in the sector. So I think education is possible. It takes a lot of time. You cannot push them, etc. But I think through example and discussion, especially, as I say, we developed this idea of having discussion without startup is quite good. Because in fact, as soon as you have startups here, people have maybe a different approach or what they say, etc. When they are together alone, it's a little bit different, I guess.
Yeah. We already touched a bit upon patents and sort of the I'll call it proprietary technology that you can sort of own to some degree and protect. My question is, right now with a lot of AI, you can have a lot of AI companies, AI-empowered companies, however you want to define it, and there's different aspects of building with AI. And one of them is building your own tech that you can patent. How important is that in an investment decision when you want to invest in a company with what technology they own, have created themselves? You can go.
Yeah. Again, this differs from investor to investor, obviously, but I would say for the vast amount of investors who are more generalists, the technology on its own doesn't play the decisive factor. I guess especially in AI, but that's just my gut feeling, my uneducated gut feeling, as I said before, would be that most of the foundational technology might go the route of open source anyway, right? I see that kind of like as a trend maybe, or at least into models where I would say, again, patterns, right, that we have seen in the past, right? So kind of like if you look at the whole development of the internet per se, of Web3 or whatever, you could always see there were parts of it that were more like open sourced, free to use for everyone, and then there were certain, for example, like developer kits or something that the big players focused on and said, hey, yes, obviously this like cloud computing storage, that's more or less the same everywhere, but we as Microsoft or Amazon or whatever or Google give you special tools to make better use of it as a developer. So that's going to be our USP, right? I think we will see the same trends and business models in the AI space as well. So there might be investors, or there certainly are investors who are super technical and are really looking for the next technology in AI. But I think the vast majority of investors will rather look for smart use of AI technology, for smart products, smart business models, smart user interfaces, and care less about what's actually under the hood.
That's really interesting. But if you go down the route of having open source technology to build on, then the competition question really comes into play, as it always does, but maybe even more. Xavia, assuming that you are of the same opinion, how would you think about the competition space in that case?
For this question, we have to look at it in terms of cost. If I have to think about as an investor, having his own technology costs a lot of money, take a lot of time. And the risk for that is that the team always want to develop again and again and again and again to have the best technology. But the only things that they have to think about is to sell a product, to go to the market. And sometimes it's easier to use an open source technology to go faster on the market. because the only things that we are looking for as an investor is the answer that we give to the market and the solution to give to the market. And there is a lot of open source technology that is really great to solve a problem on the market. The question is, if we want to sell a tech or not, the cost having his own tech or not, the reactivity for the tech. I mean, if you have your own tech inside the company, it's more reactive. If you want to change something or if you want to add something, it's easier also to answer a question for your customer if you have your own technology. After, if you have open source, you can also use all the community that also use this open source technology. I mean, there is no good answer for this question, even if the question is really good. But we have to look at it in terms of cost, in terms of timing on the market.
And I'm not an expert with you guys. Sorry, I'm just going to make a presumptions conclusion on my side. So what I'm hearing as a founder is the costs is important. But also I'm going to add my own, and the time is important, the speed in this space in order to have a competitive advantage. So I'm just going to make my own interpretation. It sounds like open source is probably not a bad idea if it is like building a company that has product market fit quite fast with this new technology. Am I assuming wrong?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say I feel completely differently, but which is, I think, where I would come from. But I will caveat that with my startup was a proprietary AI model. So, of course, I would have a preference for this type of technology. But also as well, now that I do angel investing, and I've invested in 5 companies in the last 2 years, I also say, because I probably get sent about 20 decks a week, and I also say that, you know, if it's outside of my remit, I'm generally not interested, and my remit is proprietary AI models in music technology. And, you know, I'm probably, but this is angel investing and how it differs from VC, right? So one of my investments I'll use as an example, AudioShake. When I first met the founder, Jessica, who is phenomenal, you know, she was VP at Google Comms for 11 years. You know, she's just an exceptional individual. And they didn't even have a business. They just built an AI that could separate an MP3 into its component parts. And that was a proprietary model using AI to do something that was previously not possible to do. So I was like, I'm in. Take my money, you know, like that meme. But that's because I knew that they would figure out the business on top of that. This model is impressive enough and strong enough, and she's impressive enough, so it had the team and it had the tech. And so I just totally believed they could do it. And so that's what I look for in an investment. And we've got a founder in the audience today from one of my portfolio companies. So Master Channel, again, another proprietary AI model for mastering music. And so if I love the team and I love the proprietary tech, then that's all I need as an angel to invest. However, I do have a couple of investments I've made, of course, that break this rule. And, you know, so for example, you know, I'm an investor in a music tech company called Unheard. Now, I ignored it for a long time. It's not proprietary AI. It's not, you know, it's a solo founder. It doesn't tick any of my usual boxes. But they pitched me the product one day, and I was like, that does look really good. I really like that. And then they were like, and this is nearly 2 years ago, they were like, we're doing 40 grand a month revenue. And I was like, I'm in. That is insane traction. So I will also break my own rules. So it's, you know, but I do love it. I love it when a deck comes in and it's a proprietary AI model. That's when I'm excited.
Unheard is a really great example for that. But also maybe for an investor, we have to think about our exit strategy inside the VC. So a lot of VC has a closing time, and so they have to look at the disinvestment period that they have to sell the company. For LeanSquare, it's a little bit easier because we are an evergreen fund, so we don't have any closing time, so we have time to exit. But we have to exit, and we have to make money because we are a VC. And so sometimes when we make a due diligence for a company, we look at the technology, inside technology or open source technology, and sometimes it's better to go to a property technology because the value of the company will not be maybe on the revenue of the company, but on the quality of the technology. So it depends of the company, but for sure a company who has a good timing with a good technology with patents is better to exit for a VC than just using open source and make revenues. It depends.
Yeah. So we have around between 15 and 20 minutes left. So we're going to cover one more topic, and then we're going to open for questions. So if anyone has any questions, you can start preparing them. I'm going to warn you, they need to be precise, and they need to be short, so we can answer them fast, okay? Is that good? So let's go into the last topic, and that is the central role of AI in music tech startups. Is this important for the future? Does companies need to have AI in them? It's an obvious probably answer to that, but at least does the majority of things interesting right now need to have that in mind? So who wants to answer that?
I would say one of the worst things you could do is say that you have AI because you think it's what investors want to hear and you don't actually have any AI. And sometimes I might get a pitch deck and I'm like, oh, AI music tech, yeah, let's do a call. And I get on a call and they basically want me to give them the money to build an AI. And I'm like, well, you don't really have an AI at this time. And I say, just to give you some advice, when you pitch to other VCs, I wouldn't claim that you have something when you don't even have an MVP, a minimum viable product. So I definitely don't shoehorn it in. That's worse than not having it at all. And yeah, so that would be my take on it.
I would say saying you are an AI company will sound really soon like a company 20 years ago pitching, I'm an internet company. Right? So it's obviously something that will play a role for more or less every company in every industry that will be around in a few years from now. Right? Because you will find applications for AI tools in more or less every product and industry you could think of. If you're not that specialized AI tech company with something super proprietary, exactly, don't pitch yourself as an AI company. But I think what the world is looking for, right? We see all these great demos and what is the potential behind the AI models. But how much of this has really trickled down in kind of like the daily life of people, both in the business world and in the consumer world? Not much, right? It is really similar to what maybe internet, not 20, but maybe even 30 years ago, right? Where you have all those great ideas, but it didn't really play a role in people's everyday life. And I think if you figure out something where AI can help you, or where actually AI gives your product a better proposition, then obviously run with it. And I'm pretty sure you will find, again, in more or less every product and industry, something where AI enables you to do something that has not been possible a few years ago. And I think especially in the creative industries, right, where people need to think about, also from a musician's perspective or from any other kind of creator, where people also need to rethink their business models, right? For a musician, it's not only about giving the song to Spotify and then that's kind of like the only channel of revenue. It's kind of like to figure out, what can I do with my content, right? I think their AI can be super powerful to open up many different like multimodal uses basically of creativity and content that have not been possible a few years before.
Yeah, we'll start with Thierry and then we'll do Xavia afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen so much project or products using AI at the moment that we use over time. But that's why maybe it's a good idea to invest now, because obviously it's just before. I mean, going back to the internet, I mean, when we see the internet brands that are still there, that's the one who were just a bit before, when at this time we thought they were crazy. So I think it's there. And second, to say what Florian said, I think on the creative industries, it's very important, I think, to have more AI, because obviously AI is really about creating KPIs, creating data, which is really what is missing in the creative industries. I mean, if you look at, especially audiovisual or video game or music, we don't have so much data, a bit more in music, I would say, compared to the other ones. And that's obviously is a big problem as well for investors to look at that, to look at this project, because there's not enough data and it's too much on, the type of content or what you want to achieve, etc. You never know if it's working. So, of course, AI is basically about understanding the past. It's really about, looking at what happened through database, understanding what was there, and from there to build something, and which is, I think, what is interesting. To know the past in creative industries is interesting. You know, okay, what was available, what was released, what sort of music, what sort of film, etc. What you want to know is, okay, what's going to be the future? What's going to happen based on what happened in the past? And I think this is very exciting because until now, nobody has been really doing that. It was more people, artists, obviously, that were very, leader, and it's good, but I think the AI can help these people to be even, in the front and really create something even more interesting. Not if it's better or more beautiful, but more interesting in any case. But I think the need of data is really what AI can bring to this sector.
Amazing. Xavier?
Difficult to add something after that, but I mean, as an investor, I don't want to hear a founder saying to me, "I'm an AI company." I prefer to hear, "I'm a company with a product using AI to be a better product and to have a better solution for the market." And I don't want to invest in AI, but I want to invest in a solution using AI to be better for the label, for the creator, for the founders. It's about using AI and not being an AI company.
Yeah. I'm a guy who like practical stuff, and I'm gonna simplify the answers as much as I can, and you can say yes or no. So generally speaking, having AI as a music company is probably more positive than it is negative right now. Yeah, okay, that's good.
Yes.
Yeah, that was very simple. That was for my sake. Okay, we go over to some audience discussions, but before we do that, I'm just going to plug the Sound Connections podcast. I'm hosting that. We're talking about this all the time, innovation, entrepreneurship in the music tech industry. We're soon launching the investment series, which is talking with a lot of investors about this space. So check it out, Sound Connections podcast. But I will open up for people here in the audience and short questions. I'm going to repeat them in my interpretation of the microphone for the recording's sake. I hope that's fine. But is there anyone here? Then stand up and say out loud so everyone can hear it. Can you? Yeah, it's easier to hear them.
Hi, my name is Maciej. AI in music is one trend that I see because I run a service company for music space. But the other trend that I see is ads and platforms for superfans. Can you relate to that? Is this a real trend, or is there a space for so many companies that are popping up right now, or maybe this is overhyped?
So the question was, platform for superfans, is that a real thing or is it hype? That was my interpretation. Who wants to go with that?
Yeah, well, I can put my SoundCloud hat on for this one. At SoundCloud, which is my day job, we often talk about, if the last 10 years have been about streaming, the 10 years before that were about physical media. We believe as a company that the next 10 years are going to be about the connection between the artist and fan. I think that's where the potential to grow this industry is. That's where the potential to increase our sort of total addressable market from 20 billion a year to maybe 40 is in that space. And I always use the example of like I'm a music super fan. Like I traveled 300 miles on Saturday to see a show of a band I haven't seen for 10 years because they're playing live again. And I bought a CD and I bought a T-shirt and I wrote a review for a magazine that I side hustle for. Like I'll go all in. Right? And if they had some sort of like signed drum skin, I probably would have given them $100 for it. So I feel like we need to create more opportunities in that space for the people who want to invest, who want to put their money into artists. I'd say maybe 5 of the 20 decks that I get a week are in that artist fan space. Hey, we've got an artist fan company. So I say yes every time I want to see the deck. I'm yet to see any real sort of breakthrough. I think nobody, to me, has quite figured out exactly what that's going to look like. But I do believe, as does SoundCloud, that this is one of the next big things.
Amazing. We have 8 minutes left, so I'm going to have Thierry have a short answer to that,
Yes,
and then we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah. No, just saying that working a lot on video games, I think these platforms are really interesting, but I think it's moving from superfans to communities, which is what we have in the video games. And it's really, really going beyond just being a fan, but it's communities with interaction, etc. And video games could be also a good platform for music, etc. But I think it has to move from fan to real interactive communities.
Amazing. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to ask a question? Yep.
I have a meta question, because now we've been talking about companies having to use AI. How much do you guys use AI in your day-to-day workflows as investors to assess companies, to assess
So I'm just going to repeat the question. How much do the investors use AI to research companies, use it in order in the decision-making they use around startups? Yep.
Yeah, I use it quite a lot, to be honest. I use different ChatGPT or different types of AI to really look at markets and understanding a bit more. So I'm using more and more AI, yes.
Yeah, it's as a VC we use a lot of AI too, like Thierry, just to receive the more data than we can receive, and to have a better understanding of the market, have a better understanding of the flow. And so AI, yes, is a good tool to do this.
Yeah. Is there some like validation when you're doing due diligence where you use AI technology, or?
I think, funnily enough, I obviously it's part of my day job. It's what I do at SoundCloud. You know, we build AI tools. It's what my startup did. I use ChatGPT all the time. I'm loving all the voice to text technologies out there. I've like automated a lot of my own processes. But in terms of when I make a decision on an investment as an angel, I'm still using what I consider maybe to be my advantage, which is that I know a little bit more than a lot of other people about AI, and I will ask my co-founder to validate somebody else's proprietary model for me. But I think we're probably not that far away from using the technologies to actually analyze investing opportunities, but I'm not doing it right now.
Interesting answer. Yes?
Do you see any proposals for projects where people are like tipping the artists, a bit like OnlyFans or like how some Chinese channels do have it? Because I'm waiting for that platform. I'm curious, like, if you see people with that or.
So the question was whether or not you see companies doing like tipping to fans, like OnlyFans for artists?
Yeah, so I used to work in Singapore for BandLab, and when I worked at BandLab, we launched the tip jar facility where you can, like, you know, it's really popular in Chinese culture to have this sort of tipping of coins. I think the challenge, I have also seen some businesses doing it as a standalone. I think the challenge then for that company would be if they say came to someone like us at SoundCloud and said, can we integrate your technology? All the other DSPs would go, we'll just build it ourselves. And so I feel like it's a really tough space to be in. And I feel like probably Patreon does it best in terms of like go to that platform, dedicated platform, build your own service. And it sort of is tipping, but really it's a subscription. So we're kind of figuring all that out.
Interesting. I'll allow one last question. So if anyone wants to fight, you can do it. But is there anyone else? No? Yep.
Just wanted to ask, since you guys are investors, you hold a certain amount of equity in the company. I wanted to know how much control do you have over major companies such as Warner, Universal taking control, and then taking that navigation of greed. So, like, what do you guys do?
I don't know how to rephrase that question. Could you answer again so I can understand it? So.
No, yeah, just what do you guys do to control so that there's competition, so that it's fair, and you don't have Warner and Universal and Sony just completely marketing, like governing the entire market.
So what does the investors think about controlling the companies they're invested in?
So I think it's interesting to hear that this part of the music industry is kind of like still stuck in old time thinking, right? Because I can tell from a lot of other industries, I mean, just representing here telco, for example, right? It's totally clear that we would never take a controlling stake in a company that we've invested in for our own good, right? Basically, our like position is if we can make it work with this startup, perfect for us. If on the next day they go to Vodafone and make it work with them, it's good for the startup, and then it's also good for us, right? And I think this learning has happened in a lot of industries and with a lot of CVCs. Maybe not in all of the industries, but I'm sure it will go there.
Can you imagine investing in a company that you want to be really successful and being like, and you cannot have these two customers? No. If they offer you a lot of money, you must not work with them. No, never. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. Xavi, do you want to have a last comment?
No. Yes. A small one. So as a VC, we never take the control of a company. And if at the time of an investment or whatever the timing of the company, one investor take the control of the company instead of the founders, we leave the company. That's really clear for our investment. We only invest on a company where the founders has the control of the company.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, guys, for doing this. I think there is a lot of value. One of the takeaways I have is investors are different. Investors have different opinions, and that's important for you guys to remember. Do your research. Don't reach out to the wrong people. Don't waste their time. Don't waste your time. Getting investment is a long journey, but you need to know who you are talking to. So thank you for giving the time, sparing your wisdom. They're going to be here for some hours. Go overrun them, ask them questions. I'm sorry. But it's so good to have this panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.